If you want to be an actress, that's fine with me.
If you do enough advertising, yes.
I'm about 50 years younger than my grandmother.
And I'm twice as young as the oldest land tortoise.
She's about 100 years younger than the oldest fir tree around here. It is 200 years younger than Ming, a mollusk discovered recently in the cold seas of Iceland, whose lifespan was estimated at 507 years by counting its growth rings. Today, we're going to have fun searching for the world's oldest living organism. You don't have to go far to find some truly ancient things. In these alpine forests, many lichens are over 1,000 years old. These unusual organisms result from a separation. In symbiosis between algae and fungi, they have a growth rate that rarely exceeds a few millimeters per year. So if you find one as big as your hand, there's a good chance it's older than you. This thing is older than me. You've aged 10 years and they've grown just a few centimeters at most. And that's in favorable conditions, because in Greenland, there's a species of lichen that grows only 1 centimeter per century. This one, immortalized here by Rachel Sussman, a photographer passionate about old living things, started growing about 3,000 years ago. And as small as it is, this lichen is older than the oldest known baobabs, some of which are nearly 2,000 years old. The strangest thing is that over time, these trees tend to become pulpy in the center, forming gigantic natural shelters.
As you get older, you become Dracula.
Or you'll spend your whole life stunted and puny like the primitive conifer Welwitschia, which once again proves that you don't have to be big to live a very long time. Because this tree, extraordinarily well adapted to the extreme conditions of the Namib Desert, can also live for nearly 2,000 years, even though this place gets only 2 to 2.5 centimeters of rain a year. To survive, this tiny plant, which never loses its leaves, absorbs the moisture brought in the morning by the fog that rises from the ocean. And I think it's crazy to realize that the seeds of some of these plants started to germinate at a time when the Roman Empire was still standing. 2,000 years is no small feat, but it's still modest compared to this tree, a yew with an unpronounceable name standing proudly in a cemetery in Wales and whose age is estimated at 4,500 years. This tree, likely to outlive us all, is said to be Europe's oldest and began growing when Egypt started building the pyramids of Khufu. And yet it is still 500 years younger than this bristlecone pine, the oldest known tree, whose age is estimated at around 5,000 years. 10 small meters hold 50 centuries of history above you. Well, actually, it should be noted that the pines shown on the screen, although they are all around 4,000 years old, are still far from the oldest one, whose location is kept secret to protect it. In any case, when this pine began to sprout in the White Mountains of California, 15,000 kilometers away in Egypt, papyrus and hieroglyphic writing were being invented. Yet, as incredible as its age may be, this pine is twice as young as Old Chico, a spruce tree estimated to be 9,500 years old. The problem with Old Chico is that we can't really say it's the oldest tree in the world, because it raises questions about what we mean by being alive for a long time. In the sense that it's not just any tree, it's a tree that has been cloning itself identically since it sprouted at the end of the last ice age. The trunk itself is actually relatively young. Standing just 5 centimeters tall, it's only a few centuries gazing back at you. Beneath your feet, the root system is almost 10,000 years old, having survived by cloning itself through stratification. In winter, when the heavy snow bends down the Old Chico's lower branches until they touch the ground, those branches take root and grow again the following year in a continuous process. And so, Old Chico renews itself. When its trunk dies, it rebuilds. This tree sprouted 3,500 years before writing was invented, even before the first great civilizations appeared. And the most mind-blowing thing is that it's only the third oldest known clonal organism. In fact, it only started growing 70,000 years after a colony of poplars and aspens located in Utah, which is estimated to be 80,000 years old. In this colony called Pando, none of the individual trees have been alive for very long. But if we consider the colony as a whole, then Pando appears as a giant organism made up of thousands of genetically identical clones, interconnected and linked to each other by a single immense root system that has existed for about 80 millennia. Each tree can be seen as a shoot emerging from a gigantic network of roots that, through vegetative reproduction, has been continuously renewing itself for 80,000 years. This entire forest comes from a single individual that, over time, ended up covering 44 hectares through successive cloning. A forest descended from a single tree that sprouted 80,000 years ago at a time when people were just beginning to hunt mammoths. Yet, as old as it is, the Pando colony is still 120,000 years younger than a vast colony of Posidonia oceanica located off the coast of Spain in the Mediterranean Sea. Researchers believe that some patches of these underwater meadows have been reproducing by cloning without interruption for 200,000 years. And to go even older, we'll have to leave the water for the ice of the Siberian permafrost, where in 2007 bacteria were discovered that have been active for 400,000 to 600,000 years. These little creatures were trapped in the permafrost, just as Homo erectus was barely beginning to master fire. The craziest part is that despite being in sub-zero temperatures for hundreds of thousands of years, these bacteria aren't dormant. They're active, not to the point of reproducing, but we've been able to observe them repairing their DNA. This makes Siberian actinomycetes, that's their name, the oldest living thing we know of to this day. Unless we use an even looser definition of what counts as living, we can include dormant organisms in our ranking. That is, organisms that are completely inactive, waiting for, let's say, favorable conditions to start moving and living again, a bit like a seed waiting to sprout. In that case, we can add several new things we've seen, including 2 examples. In the 1990s, we managed to revive microorganisms that had been trapped and seemingly frozen for 25 million years. Among the great variety of those that came out of a slumber worthy of the dawn of time, there was a yeast, in a way 220,000 times older than my grandmother, with which a researcher had fun brewing a beer.
Yes, no, that's enough. I'm not going to let this happen. You're not even talking about mammals, but
let go of the camera. And in 2013, during a drilling session, they found buried 2 to 2.5 kilometers deep under the ocean floor in sediments that are 100 million years old, viruses and bacteria, in very low concentration, about 1,000 organisms, in the volume of a teaspoon of coarse sample, while you can find tens of billions in a teaspoon of healthy soil, like this one. As few as they are, these creatures have still crossed staggering spans of time to reach us, and their presence makes us question what we mean by living. Their metabolism is so slow that researchers question if it's alive or just not dead. In fact, this not dead thing may have even encountered dinosaurs. But finally, let's come back to something closer to us in terms of longevity. 10 years ago, off the coast of Alaska, a harpoon dating back to 1879 was found lodged in the fat of a whale. The animal survived with this object in its neck for years. While whales over a century old are rare, some are believed to live up to 200 years, which is only half the age of the oldest vertebrate known on Earth, or rather, in the seas. Because it's a Greenland shark, studied in 2016, that holds the record with an estimated age of around 400 years. And this shark lived 3 to 4 times longer than Jean Calment, who lived as long as Craig, the oldest lobster ever discovered.
anyway, young or old age doesn't really matter unless you're cheese. And you can also support Balade Mentale on TP.
We have the grandchildren we deserve.
Absolutely. Plus, there's the grandmother you deserve.
I'm the man to remember. That's true.